No woman had ever survived a night in the Alpha King's chambers. The palace maids whispered it like a prayer and a curse. 17 women had tried over the years, drawn by his beauty or commanded by duty, and 17 women had been carried out before dawn, cold and still, the life drained from their bodies. So when Sorcia collapsed from exhaustion on his bed, her cheek pressed against his bare chest, she expected to die. She was a disgraced healer's daughter, branded and broken, sold into palace servitude to escape execution. Dying in the arms of the untouchable king seemed a fitting end to her miserable existence. At least it would be warm. At least someone would be holding her. But death never came. She woke hours later to find herself still breathing, still alive, his arm wrapped around her waist and his cold gray eyes watching her with something she couldn't name. Shock, hunger, fear. "Why aren't you dead?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Sorcia had no answer. She only knew that his skin was cold as winter stone, that his heartbeat beneath her ear was slow and faint, and that for the first time in 3 years, someone was touching her without flinching. Alpha King Malachar of Valdenmoor had not touched another living soul since he was 7 years old, and now he couldn't let her go. He offered her a bargain that night. Stay close, let him touch her, warm the frozen curse that was slowly killing him. In exchange, he would give her protection, comfort, a life beyond the servants' quarters. But there was one condition: she must never love him. "Because everyone who loves me," he said, his fingers tracing her jaw with desperate gentleness, "dies." Neither of them understood how impossible that promise would be. The servants called it the Death Watch. Every month, one maid was selected to clean the king's private chambers. It was considered both an honor and a sentence. An honor because the chambers were in the North Tower, far from prying eyes. A sentence because of what happened to those who lingered too long. Sorcia had been at Valdenmoor Palace for 3 years, and in that time she had watched 4 girls be carried out of those chambers. Their faces were always peaceful, their skin always pale, their hearts always stopped. No marks, no wounds, no explanation. Just death. "Sorcia." The head housekeeper's voice cracked like a whip. "You've been assigned." Sorcia looked up from the linens she was folding, her fingers freezing mid-crease. Around her, the other maids went silent. She could feel their relief, their pity, their fear. "Assigned to what?" she asked, though she already knew. "The North Tower. Tonight." Sorcia's stomach dropped. She wanted to protest, to beg, to run. But servants didn't have that luxury, especially not branded servants whose very existence depended on the palace's mercy. Her hand moved unconsciously to her collarbone, where the raised scar lay hidden beneath her uniform, the healer's mark of condemnation, the brand that proclaimed her a life-taker, a poisoner, a murderer. If the other servants knew what she was, they would have thrown her to the wolves themselves. "I understand," she said quietly. "What time?" "Midnight." He prefers darkness. Of course he did. Monsters always preferred darkness. The hours until midnight passed like water through a cracked vessel, too quickly and not quickly enough. Sorcia tried to eat. The bread tasted like ash. She tried to sleep. Her body refused. When the clock struck 12, she climbed the North Tower stairs with a bucket of cleaning supplies and a heart full of resignation. The door to his chambers was massive, black oak carved with wolves and thorns. She knocked twice. No answer. She pushed it open. Darkness greeted her. The chamber was vast, lit only by dying embers in a fireplace that seemed too far away to offer warmth. Heavy curtains blocked the windows. Shadows pooled in every corner like living things. And there, on the bed, lay the king. Sorcia's breath caught. She had seen him before, of course. Everyone had. Alpha King Malachar attended council meetings and formal dinners, standing apart from everyone, untouched and untouchable. but always from a distance, always behind a wall of guards and protocol. Up close, he was devastating. Silver-white hair spilled across black pillows. His features were sharp, almost cruel in their beauty. High cheekbones, a jaw that could cut glass, lips pale as frost. His chest was bare, rising and falling with breaths that seemed too slow, too shallow. He looked like death dreaming of life, and he was asleep. Sorsha released the breath she'd been holding. Asleep. She could clean quickly, quietly, and leave before he ever knew she was here. No lingering, no dying. She set down her bucket and began her work. Dusting the mantel, sweeping the hearth, folding discarded clothes that smelled of winter pine and something older, sadder. But exhaustion was a cruel master. She had been working double shifts for weeks, covering for sick maids and earning extra coin to send to her younger brother, the only family member who hadn't abandoned her. Sleep had become a distant memory, a luxury she couldn't afford. Her vision blurred, her hands slowed. She stumbled toward the fireplace, meaning to add another log, and her knees buckled. She didn't fall to the floor. She fell onto the bed, onto him. Her cheek landed directly on his bare chest, her body collapsing against his with all the grace of a sack of grain. His skin was ice cold, shockingly so, and yet somehow it didn't hurt. It felt almost soothing. I should move, she thought dimly. I should run. But her eyes were already closing. And then there was only darkness. She didn't know how long she slept. Minutes, hours, an eternity. She only knew that when consciousness slowly returned, something was wrong. She was still breathing, and something was wrapped around her waist. Sorsha's eyes flew open. The first thing she saw was pale skin stretched over hard muscle. The second thing she saw was a heartbeat pulsing faintly in the hollow of a throat. The third thing she saw was his face. He was awake. He was watching her. And his arm was holding her against him as if she were something precious. "You're not dead," he said. Before Sorsha could respond, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Heavy boots, multiple guards. The door began to open. The king moved faster than Sorsha's mind could process. One moment she was sprawled across his chest, frozen in terror. The next, she was standing beside the fireplace with a poker in her hand, positioned perfectly to look like a servant tending the flames. Malachar sat up in bed, the blankets pooling around his waist, his expression transforming from haunted vulnerability to cold indifference in the space of a heartbeat. The door swung fully open. 2 guards entered, their eyes sweeping the room. "Your Majesty." The larger one bowed stiffly. "We heard movement. We came to ensure your safety." "My safety is not your concern, Brennan." The king's voice was ice and authority. "Leave." "But sire," the maid is doing her job, as you should be doing yours. Outside. The guards exchanged glances. Their eyes found Sorsha, standing rigid by the fireplace, the poker trembling slightly in her grip. She could see the question forming in their minds. Why was she still alive? "Your Majesty," the smaller guard began carefully. "Protocol states that any servant alone with you must be..." "Must be what?" Malachar's voice dropped to something dangerous. "Questioned? Examined? Carried out feet first like the others?" Silence. "I changed the protocol." The king rose from the bed, all lean muscle and predatory grace, seemingly unbothered by his state of undress. "This one stays. Now get out before I demonstrate why they call me untouchable." The guards fled. The moment the door closed, Sorsha's composure shattered. The poker slipped from her fingers, clattering against the stone floor. Her legs gave out. She sank onto the hearth, her whole body shaking. "Why am I alive?" she whispered. Malachar stood across the room, watching her with those unnatural gray eyes. In the firelight she could see what she'd missed before. The shadows beneath his eyes, the hollowness in his cheeks, the way his skin seemed almost translucent, as if he were fading from the inside out. I don't know, he admitted. Everyone says. She swallowed hard. The other maids. They all died. Yes. He said it without emotion, as if describing the weather. I didn't kill them intentionally, if that's what you're wondering. My curse doesn't discriminate. Curse? He moved closer, stopping just beyond arm's reach. Even from that distance, Sorsha could feel the cold radiating from him. It wasn't natural. It wasn't human. It was like standing before an open grave. I drain life, he said flatly. Anyone who touches me dies. It begins as exhaustion, then coldness. Then their heart simply stops. His jaw tightened. I have killed my mother, 3 nursemaids, and every woman who has ever tried to warm my bed. I haven't touched another living soul in 17 years. Sorsha stared at him. But I touched you. I slept on your chest for 4 hours. His voice cracked almost imperceptibly. I counted every minute. I kept waiting for you to stop breathing. You never did. The confession hung between them, weighted with something Sorsha couldn't name. 4 hours. He had held her for 4 hours, waiting for her to die, and when she hadn't, you let me stay, she breathed. I couldn't. He stopped, turned away. When he spoke again, his voice was controlled once more, stripped of whatever vulnerability had slipped through. I need to understand why you survived, which means I need you close, available for testing. Testing? Touch. The word seemed to cost him. Controlled exposure. To determine whether you're somehow immune or whether I simply haven't killed you yet. Sorsha should have been terrified. She should have begged to be released, to go back to her simple servant's life where the only death she risked was from overwork. Instead, she thought of his arm around her waist, the steady rhythm of his heartbeat beneath her ear. The first gentle touch she'd felt in 3 years. What would I receive in return? She asked. Malachar turned back to her, surprise flickering in his eyes. You're negotiating? I'm a servant with nothing. If you want access to my body. She flushed at the phrasing but pushed on. I should receive something in exchange. For a long moment, he simply studied her. Then something crossed his features. Something that might have been respect. Name your terms. Better quarters. Food that isn't scraps. Protection from the other servants who wonder why I survived. She hesitated, then added quietly, and you won't look beneath my uniform. His eyes sharpened. You're hiding something. We all hide something, Your Majesty. The silence stretched taut. Sorsha's heart stuttered against her ribs. She had just demanded conditions from a king who could have her executed with a word. But something told her that this man, this cursed, touch-starved creature, needed her more than she needed him. Agreed, he said finally. You will report to my chambers each night at midnight. You will let me touch you in whatever manner I require, and in return, I will give you everything you've asked for and more. Sorsha nodded slowly. Is there anything else? Yes. He moved closer, close enough that she could smell the winter on his skin. One final condition, the most important one. What is it? His hand rose, hovering just beside her face without quite touching. His eyes were storm clouds, grief and warning and hunger all tangled together. Never fall in love with me, he said softly. I mean it. Not fondness, not attachment, not even affection. Keep your heart locked away where I cannot touch it. Sorsha frowned. Why? Because my curse doesn't just drain life, Sorsha. He spoke her name like a secret, like a wound. It feeds on love. The deeper the feeling, the faster the death. My mother held me for 3 minutes and died because she loved me more than breath itself. His hand dropped. If you ever love me, he finished, I will kill you, and I will be unable to stop it. Sorcia should have refused, should have run. Instead, she held out her hand. Then it's a good thing, she said quietly, that I've forgotten how to love. His cold fingers wrapped around hers, and somewhere in the shadows beyond the door, someone watched them seal their bargain and began to plan. The arrangement began that very night. Sorcia was moved from the cramped servants' quarters to a small but private room in the east wing. It had a real bed with actual blankets, a window that overlooked the gardens, and a lock on the door that only she possessed the key to. It was more luxury than she had known in 3 years. The other servants noticed immediately. Whispers followed her through the corridors like hungry ghosts. How did she survive? What did she do? What did she give him? Sorcia ignored them. She had survived worse than whispers. Each night at midnight she climbed the North Tower stairs and entered the king's chambers. Each night he waited for her in the darkness, and each night they conducted their strange experiments. The first night, he simply held her hand for an hour while she sat beside his bed. His fingers were cold as river stones, but her own warmth never faded. She felt no exhaustion, no draining, nothing but the steady pulse of his grip. Still alive, he murmured when the hour ended, something like wonder in his voice. The second night, he pressed his palm flat against her back while she stood facing the fire. The cold seeped through her dress, but again, nothing more. No weakness, no death. How? He asked the darkness. How are you doing this? Sorcia had no answer. She only knew that his touch, for all its coldness, felt strangely right, like two broken pieces finding their match. The third night he asked her to lie beside him. Just lying, he clarified, his voice carefully neutral. Nothing more. I want to see if prolonged contact changes anything. Sorcia's pulse quickened, but she nodded. She climbed onto the massive bed, keeping a careful distance, and lay on her back, staring at the canopy above. For a long moment, neither moved. Then his hand found hers in the darkness, and he pulled her closer, her back against his chest, his arm around her waist, his breath cold against her neck. It was the position she'd woken up in that first night. But this time, she was aware of every sensation. The hard planes of his body, the silk of his hair brushing her shoulder, the desperate way his arm tightened around her as if afraid she might vanish. Is this acceptable? He asked quietly. Yes. Her voice came out smaller than intended. They lay like that for hours. Sorcia should have been frightened, sharing a bed with a man who could kill with a touch. Instead, she felt something she hadn't experienced in years. Safe. Somewhere around the third hour, she felt his body relax against hers, his breathing deepening into sleep. The realization struck her with unexpected force. He had fallen asleep holding her. This untouchable king, who had not known gentle contact since childhood, had trusted her enough to sleep in her presence. Something cracked open in her chest, something dangerous and warm. No, she told herself firmly, no attachment, no affection. This is a transaction. She repeated it like a prayer until dawn crept through the curtains. The following days fell into a rhythm. By day, Sorcia maintained her servant's duties, though the housekeeper had quietly reduced her workload. By night, she belonged to the king. It should have felt like another form of servitude. Instead, it felt like freedom. Because Malachar never treated her like a servant. He asked her opinions about kingdom matters. He listened when she spoke about the herbs she used to study, the healing arts that had once been her birthright. He laughed once at a joke she made about a pompous counselor, and the sound was so unexpected, so human, that Sorcia nearly wept. You were a healer, he observed one night, his hand idly stroking her hair as she lay against his chest. Before whatever brought you here. Sorcia tensed. How did you know? The way you speak about plants. The way your hands moved when you described preparing poultices. You have a healer's instincts. His fingers paused. What happened? The brand on her collarbone seemed to burn. I told you. Some questions shouldn't be asked. And I told you I wouldn't look beneath your uniform. His voice was gentle in a way that hurt. I'm asking you to tell me. There's a difference. Sorsha was silent for a long moment. The fire crackled. His heartbeat was slow and steady beneath her ear, stronger than it had been that first night. She realized with a start that he was healthier now, less pale and less transparent. As if her presence was feeding him something he desperately needed. I was accused of murder, she whispered finally, poisoning my betrothed. They said I used dark healing arts to stop his heart. Malakar's hand stilled. Did you? No. Her voice broke. I loved him. I would never. She stopped, swallowed. It doesn't matter. No one believed me. My own father testified against me. I was branded as a life-taker and sold into servitude to avoid execution. The silence that followed was heavy. Then Malakar's arm tightened around her, pulling her closer, and he pressed his cold lips to her temple in a gesture so tender that tears spilled down her cheeks. I believe you, he said simply. 3 words. Just 3 words. But they broke something open inside her that had been locked away for 3 years. Why? She managed. You don't know me. You don't know what I'm capable of. I know that every time you touch me, you give me life instead of taking it. His thumb brushed away her tears. That is not the gift of a murderer. That is the gift of a true healer. Sorsha had no response. She could only lie there, crying silently, while this impossible man held her together with cold hands and warm words. You must never love him, she reminded herself. But the warning felt hollow now, distant, already beginning to fade. The next morning brought trouble. Sorsha was crossing the main courtyard when she heard a voice that stopped her cold. Well, well, if it isn't the poisoner's daughter. She turned slowly, her blood freezing in her veins. A woman stood near the fountain, flanked by 2 servants in the colors of House Merrick. Her hair was golden, her dress was silk, and her smile was sharp enough to cut glass. Lady Vivienne Merrick, the sister of Sorsha's dead betrothed. I heard the strangest rumor, Vivienne continued, gliding closer, that a certain branded servant has somehow wormed her way into the king's chambers. Night after night after night. Her eyes glittered with malice. Imagine my surprise when I realized it was you. Sorsha's mouth went dry. My lady, I don't know what you've heard, but save your lies. Vivienne stepped close enough to whisper. I know what you are. I know what you did to my brother. And I promise you this. Her lips curved into something vicious. By the time I'm finished, the king will know too, and he will throw you to the wolves himself. She swept away before Sorsha could respond, leaving her standing frozen in the courtyard. Her past had found her. And this time, there would be no escape. Sorsha told no one about Vivienne's threat. What would she say? The sister of the man I was accused of murdering has arrived at court and plans to destroy me? The servants would rejoice. The guards would shrug. And the king? The king had his own burdens. She would not add hers to them. So she continued her nightly visits as if nothing had changed, climbing the tower stairs with a calm she didn't feel, entering his chambers with a smile she had to force. But Malakar noticed. You're distracted tonight, he observed on the 4th evening after Vivienne's arrival. They were seated by the fire, her back against his chest, his arms wrapped around her waist. It had become their usual position, the one that seemed to warm him most efficiently. Your heartbeat is faster than normal. Your muscles are tense. I'm fine, Sorsha lied. You're a terrible liar. She almost laughed. Almost. Has anyone ever told you that you're insufferably observant? Frequently. Usually right before they stop speaking to me entirely. His chin rested on her shoulder, his breath cool against her neck. Tell me what's wrong. Nothing is wrong. Sorsha. The way he said her name undid her, not as a command, but as a plea. As if her troubles were his troubles, her pain his pain. There's a woman at court, she admitted quietly. Lady Vivian Merrick. She knew me. Before. Malachar went very still. Knew you how? Her brother was the man I was accused of killing. Sorsha stared into the flames, unable to meet his eyes. She believes I murdered him. She's sworn to expose me to you, to everyone. She wants me thrown to the wolves. The silence stretched so long that Sorsha began to fear she had made a terrible mistake. Perhaps he would believe Vivienne. Perhaps he would decide that a branded murderer was too dangerous to keep close, regardless of her strange immunity. Then his arms tightened around her, pulling her closer still. Vivienne Merrick, he said slowly, is a guest of my court. She is also a known schemer whose family has been angling for royal favor for decades. His voice dropped to something cold and protective. If she threatens you again, you will tell me. And I will handle it. Handle it how? That depends entirely on how foolish she chooses to be. Sorsha turned slightly, trying to read his expression. In the firelight, his features were softer than usual, the sharp angles smoothed by shadow. He looked almost human, almost warm. Why do you care? She asked. I'm just a servant, a tool for testing your curse. You said so yourself. Something flickered in his gray eyes. Perhaps I was wrong. Before she could respond, he released her and stood, moving toward a locked cabinet near his desk. He retrieved a key from around his neck and opened it, withdrawing an ancient leathered journal bound with silver clasps. I want to show you something, he said. Something I've never shown anyone. Sorsha's lungs seized as he returned to her side, pressing the journal into her hands. The leather was cracked with age, the silver tarnished. It felt heavy with secrets. What is this? My great-great-grandfather's diary. Malachar sat beside her, close enough that their shoulders touched. The man who brought this curse upon our bloodline. Sorsha opened the journal carefully. The pages were yellowed, the ink faded, but the words were still legible. She began to read. The story that emerged was darker than she expected. King Aldrich of Valdenmoor had been a conqueror, ruthless and cold. He had destroyed an entire coven of witches to claim their lands, burning their sacred grove and salting the earth where their temple had stood. But one witch had survived, a healer named Thessaly, whose power ran deeper than fire or destruction. Thessaly had loved her coven like family. She had watched them burn, and in her grief, she had crafted a curse more terrible than death. The kings of Valdenmoor shall never know love, Sorsha read aloud, her voice trembling. They shall crave touch and destroy all who provide it. They shall hunger for connection and bring death to all who offer it. And when at last a king dares to love, truly love, that love shall be the instrument of his destruction. She looked up at Malachar, horror dawning. It's not just touch that kills, she whispered. It's the curse feeding on emotion. The closer someone feels to you, the faster they die. That's why your mother... 3 minutes. His voice was hollow. She held me for 3 minutes because she loved me more than anything in the world. And the curse devoured that love and turned it into death. Tears burned Sorsha's eyes. She thought of all those maids, those women who had died in his chambers. They hadn't loved him. Not truly. But they must have felt something. Attraction, pity, curiosity. Even those small emotions had been enough to kill them. Why doesn't it affect me? She asked. I don't know. He took the journal from her hands, closing it gently. But I intend to find out. There are more records in the royal archives, writings from Thessaly herself that were preserved after the burning. I've been searching for a way to break this curse for 17 years. And you think the answer might be in those writings? I think, he said slowly, that you might be the answer. Your immunity, your gift for giving life instead of taking it, it can't be coincidence. His hand rose to cup her face, his thumb tracing her cheekbone. You're special, Sorsha. More special than you know. The tenderness in his voice made her chest ache. She leaned into his touch despite herself, despite every warning, despite the voice screaming in her head that this was dangerous. There's something else, he continued quietly. Something I discovered in the archives yesterday, about the healer who cursed us. What about her? His gray eyes searched her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. Thessaly's bloodline didn't end with her. She had a daughter, hidden away before the burning, raised in secret by a family of healers in the eastern provinces. His thumb stilled against her cheek. A family whose descendants still carry her gift. The gift of restoration. Of life. Sorsha's pulse began to race. What are you saying? I'm saying that the brand on your chest marks you as a life-taker, but I believe the truth is exactly the opposite. His voice dropped to a whisper. I believe you're descended from Thessaly herself. And I believe that's why you're the only person in 200 years who can touch me without dying. The words hit Sorsha like a physical blow. She stumbled backward, her hand flying to her collarbone where the brand burned beneath her dress. Her mind raced through memories. Her mother's unusual skill with herbs, her grandmother's whispered stories about their special blood, her own inexplicable ability to sense illness and ease pain. That's impossible, she breathed. I would have known. My family would have told you that you descended from a witch who cursed a royal bloodline? Malakar's expression was unreadable. Would they? Before Sorsha could answer, the chamber door burst open. Vivienne Merrick stood in the doorway, flanked by 2 royal guards, a triumphant smile on her face. Your Majesty, she said sweetly. I'm so sorry to interrupt. But I have urgent information about the woman in your chambers. Her eyes found Sorsha, gleaming with malice. Information that proves she's even more dangerous than anyone suspected. The silence that followed Vivienne's entrance was suffocating. Sorsha stood frozen beside the fireplace, her pulse thundering so loudly she was certain everyone could hear it. Malakar had risen to his full height, his expression transforming from tender intimacy to icy authority in the span of a breath. Lady Vivienne. His voice could have frozen the flames themselves. You forget yourself. No one enters my private chambers without invitation. Forgive me, Your Majesty, but this couldn't wait. Vivienne glided forward, unfazed by his cold fury. She produced a rolled parchment from her sleeve. I've obtained documents from the eastern provinces, records of the poisoner's trial. Sorsha's blood turned to ice. You see, Vivienne continued, the servant you've been harboring wasn't just accused of murder, she confessed to it. That's a lie! The words burst from Sorsha before she could stop them. I never... Silence. Malakar's command cut through the room, but when Sorsha looked at him, she saw that his eyes weren't angry. They were calculating. Lady Vivienne, present your evidence. Vivienne unfurled the parchment with theatrical satisfaction. A signed confession, Your Majesty. In her own hand, she admitted to using forbidden healing arts to stop my brother's heart. She turned her poisonous smile toward Sorsha. Would you like me to read it aloud? That confession was coerced, Sorsha said, her voice shaking. They tortured me for 3 days. They said they would execute my younger brother if I didn't sign. I would have signed anything. How convenient. Vivienne's tone dripped with false sympathy. The poisoner claims innocence. How original. Enough. Malakar stepped forward, plucking the parchment from Vivienne's hands. He studied it for a long moment, his expression revealing nothing. Then he looked up at Sorsha with those storm-gray eyes, and she couldn't read what she saw there. Fear coiled in her stomach. This was it. The moment he turned on her. the moment her fragile sanctuary crumbled to dust. "Lady Vivian," Malachar said slowly, "do you know what I find most interesting about this document? That it proves her guilt, Your Majesty? No. That it proves yours." The words hung in the air like the blade of a guillotine. Vivian's smile faltered. "I beg your pardon?" Malachar held up the parchment, angling it toward the firelight. "This seal at the bottom. It belongs to Magistrate Corvin of the Eastern Provinces, a man who, coincidentally, has been in your family's pocket for the past decade." His voice grew colder with each word. "This confession was obtained under torture, witnessed by a corrupt official, and signed under threat of familial execution. In Valdemar, that makes it invalid. Your Majesty, I assure you." "You assure me of nothing." Malachar stepped closer to Vivienne, and Sorsha watched the woman shrink backward despite herself. "What I see is a noble woman who has spent 3 years harboring a vendetta, who has used her family's influence to manufacture evidence, and who has now burst into my private chambers to accuse a woman under my protection." "Under your protection?" Vivian's composure cracked. "She's a servant, a branded criminal. She is mine." The possessiveness in his voice sent shivers down Sorsha's spine. "Whatever she may or may not have done in the past, she belongs to me now. And I protect what is mine." The declaration echoed through the chamber. Her breathing faltered. "She belongs to me. Whatever she may have done. I protect what is mine." No one had protected her in 3 years. No one had defended her since her mother died. And now this cold, cursed king was standing between her and the woman who wanted to destroy her. Heat pricked at her eyes, but she refused to let the tears fall. "Not here. Not in front of Vivienne." "You're making a mistake," Vivienne said, her voice trembling with suppressed rage. "She killed my brother. She deserves—" "What she deserves is not for you to decide." Malachar gestured toward the guards who had accompanied Vivienne. "Escort Lady Vivienne to her chambers. She is confined there until I determine appropriate consequences for this intrusion." "You can't do this." Vivienne's composure shattered completely. "My family will hear of this. The other noble houses will—" "Will what?" Malachar's smile was winter itself. "Challenge me? I am the Alpha King. I have killed 17 people simply by touching them. Do you truly believe anyone would risk my wrath over a petty vendetta?" The guard seized Vivienne's arms. She struggled, screaming threats and accusations as they dragged her from the chamber. The door slammed shut behind them, and suddenly the room was silent except for the crackling of the fire. Sorsha's knees gave out. She sank onto the nearest chair, her whole body shaking with the aftermath of terror. Malachar was beside her in an instant, kneeling at her feet, his cold hands capturing hers. "Breathe," he commanded gently. "You're safe. She can't touch you. You defended me." Her voice came out broken. "You didn't even hesitate. Why?" "I told you why. You're mine. I'm your servant, your test subject. You said—" "I know what I said." His jaw tightened. "I was wrong." The admission cracked something open between them. Sorsha looked at this impossible man, this death-bringer who held her hands like she was made of glass, and felt her carefully constructed walls begin to crumble. "What am I to you?" she whispered. "Truly." Malachar was silent for a long moment. His thumbs traced circles on her palms, his eyes fixed on their joined hands as if the answer might be written there. "You are the first person to touch me in 17 years and live," he said finally. "You are the first person to see me as something other than a monster. You are warmth when I have known only cold, and life when I have brought only death." He looked up at her, and his gray eyes were raw with something that looked almost like fear. "You are the most dangerous thing that has ever happened to me, Sorsha. Because for the first time in my cursed existence, I want something I cannot have." Her chest tightened. "What do you want?" His hand rose to cup her face. his thumb brushing away a tear she hadn't realized she'd shed. You, he breathed. I want you. Not as a servant. Not as a test. I want to wake with you beside me. I want to hear your voice first thing in the morning. I want to know every secret you've ever hidden and hold every fear you've ever felt. His voice cracked. I want to love you, Sorsha. And that is precisely why I never can. The words were a blade and a caress all at once. The curse, Sorsha whispered. The curse. His hand fell away. If I love you, you die. Not eventually. Not slowly. The moment I let myself feel it fully, the moment I stop fighting it, the curse will take you from me. He stood abruptly, turning away. I was a fool to let this go so far. I should have kept you at a distance. I should have. Don't. Sorsha rose on shaking legs. Don't pull away from me now. Not after everything. I have to. His voice was anguished. Don't you understand? Every moment I spend with you, every touch, every conversation, every time you make me laugh or think or feel, I fall deeper. And the deeper I fall, the closer you come to death. I haven't died yet. Yet. He whirled to face her, and she saw the terror beneath his cold exterior. That word haunts me every single night. You haven't died yet. But what if tonight is the night the curse decides my feelings have grown too strong? What if I wake tomorrow to find you cold and still beside me? Sorsha crossed the distance between them, ignoring the warning in his eyes, and pressed her palm flat against his chest. His heart pounded beneath her hand, fast and desperate. Then we find a way to break the curse, she said firmly. You said Thessaly's writings might hold the answer. You said I might be descended from her bloodline. If that's true, maybe my immunity isn't just luck. Maybe it's the key. And if it isn't? If we search and find nothing? Then we search harder. She held his gaze, willing him to believe her. I am not afraid of your curse, Malakar. I am not afraid of dying. I have spent 3 years as a branded criminal, waiting for death to claim me. At least this way, I would die in the arms of someone who actually wants me there. His expression shattered. Sorsha, don't tell me to leave. Her voice broke. Don't send me away. I couldn't bear it, not now. Not after. He kissed her. It happened so suddenly that she gasped against his mouth. His lips were cold but soft, desperate but gentle, and his hands cupped her face as if she were something infinitely precious. She melted into him, her arms wrapping around his neck, her body pressing against his cold chest. The kiss deepened, consuming her utterly. She felt his hunger, his loneliness, and his years of touch starvation pouring into her through the press of his mouth, and she gave back everything she had. Her warmth, her want, and her terrifying, impossible feelings. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, his forehead rested against hers. This is madness, he whispered. Yes. You could die. Yes. And you still want this? Want me? Sorsha pulled back just enough to meet his eyes, gray storms looking into her soul. I want you, she said simply. Whatever comes. For a heartbeat, she saw joy flash across his features, pure, unguarded joy. And then it was gone, replaced by something darker. Then we have work to do. He released her gently, stepping back. Tomorrow, we begin searching the archives in earnest. We find Thessaly's writings. We find a way to break this curse before. He stopped abruptly. His hand flew to his chest. Malakar? Sorsha stepped toward him. What's wrong? Nothing. But his voice was strained. Just a twinge. It happens sometimes when I... He stopped again, his brow furrowing. When I feel too much. Fear spiked through her. The curse? It's nothing. I'm fine. But as Sorsha watched him struggle to compose himself, she couldn't shake the feeling that something had just changed between them. Something that couldn't be taken back. The weeks that followed were the happiest of Sorcia's life, and the most terrifying. By day, she and Malachar scoured the royal archives, searching for any trace of Thessaly's writings. They found fragments, a torn page here, a cryptic reference there. But the full texts remained elusive, hidden somewhere in the castle's labyrinthine depths. By night, they fell into each other. It started slowly, chaste kisses that left them both breathless, hands that wandered and explored, bodies pressed together in the darkness, seeking warmth and connection. Then it stopped being slow. On the 14th night, Malachar carried her to his bed and loved her with a desperation that left them both trembling. His hands mapped every inch of her skin. His mouth traced paths that made her cry out. And when they finally joined together, Sorcia understood why people called it sacred. It was worship. It was war. It was two broken people finding wholeness in each other's arms. Afterward, he held her against his chest, his fingers tracing lazy patterns on her back. "I never thought I'd have this," he murmured. "I had accepted that I would die untouched, unloved, that I would be the last cursed king of Valdenmoor." His arms tightened around her. "Then you fell asleep on my chest and changed everything." Sorcia smiled against his skin. "An accident. I was just exhausted. The best accident of my miserable life." She propped herself up to look at him. In the candlelight, he looked younger, softer. The shadows under his eyes had faded. The translucent quality of his skin had given way to something healthier, more vital. "You're getting better," she observed. "Stronger, warmer. Because of you." He tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "You're healing me, Sorcia. Whatever gift your bloodline carries, it's counteracting the curse." "Then maybe we don't need to find the writings. Maybe I'm enough." But even as she said it, she saw the shadow pass over his features. "Maybe," he said carefully, "but I'd rather be certain. The curse is ancient, powerful. I don't want to trust your safety to hope alone." Sorcia nodded, though a small knot of worry had begun forming in her stomach. He was healthier, yes, but lately, she'd noticed something else. He was pulling away. Not physically. If anything, he was more attentive than ever in bed. But emotionally, something had changed. He avoided discussing the future. He changed the subject whenever she mentioned permanent arrangements, and sometimes, when he thought she wasn't looking, she caught him watching her with an expression that looked almost like grief. "Malachar," she said carefully, "is there something you're not telling me?" His hand stilled on her back. "What do you mean?" "You've been distant, distracted. Every time I try to talk about what happens next, there's nothing to discuss." His voice was too light, too controlled. "We search for the writings. We break the curse. We live happily ever after. And if we don't break it?" Silence. "Malachar?" He sat up abruptly, turning away from her. In the candlelight, she could see the tension in his shoulders, the rigid line of his spine. "There's something I haven't told you," he said quietly. The knot in Sorcia's stomach tightened into a fist. "What is it?" "The curse. It doesn't just feed on love. It creates a bond between the king and whoever he loves, a bond that cannot be broken except by death." "I don't understand." "If I fully love you—" He stopped, his voice cracking. "If I allow myself to feel the depths of what I feel for you, the curse will activate. But it won't kill you immediately. It will bond us. Tie your life force to mine." "That doesn't sound terrible," Sorcia began. "It isn't terrible." He turned to face her, and she saw tears glistening in his gray eyes. "It's a death sentence. For you." "What do you mean?" "The bonded maid of a cursed king shares his lifespan, his weakness, his eventual destruction." His voice was barely a whisper now. "My grandmother was bonded to my grandfather. She died at 32, drained of all life, withered like a flower in frost. My mother was bonded to my father. She lasted 3 years after his death before she simply stopped breathing. Horror crept through Sorsha's veins. The curse kills the bondmate? Always. Eventually. He reached for her hand, gripping it tightly. If I bond with you, if I let myself truly love you, you might live for years. You might even give me children. But in the end, the curse will drain you dry. You'll die young, Sorsha. Because of me. The room seemed to spin around her. That's why you've been distant, she realized. You're trying not to love me. I'm failing. The words were anguished. Every moment with you, I fall deeper. Every laugh, every touch, every time you look at me like I'm worth something. He broke off, his composure shattering. I can't stop it. I've tried. But I can't. Sorsha stared at him, her mind racing. He loved her. He truly loved her. But that love was a death sentence. Then we have to find another way, she said. The writings might not contain an answer, might not exist anymore. We've been searching for weeks and found almost nothing. He cupped her face in his cold hands. I can't keep doing this, Sorsha. I can't keep falling in love with you knowing that it will kill you. What are you saying? The grief in his eyes answered before his words did. I'm saying that perhaps you should leave. Go somewhere far away, somewhere the curse can't reach you. Start a new life. Find someone who can love you without... No. The word burst from her like a battle cry. Absolutely not. Sorsha, you don't get to make this decision for me. She grabbed his wrists, holding him in place. I am not a fragile doll you need to protect. I am a healer's daughter, descended from a line of witches powerful enough to curse a royal bloodline. If there's an answer, I will find it. And if there isn't... Her voice broke, but she forced herself to continue. Then I would rather die loved in your arms than live 100 years alone. You don't mean that. I have never meant anything more. They stared at each other, both trembling, both terrified. Sorsha, Malachar whispered, and in that single word was everything. Love, fear, desperation, surrender. The door exploded inward. Guards flooded the chamber, swords drawn. Behind them came a figure in ceremonial robes. Lord Chancellor Dravis, the second most powerful man in Valdenmoor. Your Majesty. Dravis's voice was cold with triumph. You are under arrest for violation of the sacred accords. Malachar was on his feet in an instant, positioning himself between Sorsha and the guards. What is the meaning of this? The meaning, Your Majesty, is that you have taken a bound criminal into your bed. You have shared royal secrets with a branded murderer. And you have done so while ignoring the Council's repeated attempts to arrange a proper royal marriage. The Council has no authority over my personal life. The Council has every authority when the King's judgment is compromised. Dravis's eyes found Sorsha, still wrapped in bedsheets, and his lip curled with disgust. The witch has bewitched you, Your Majesty, just as her ancestor bewitched your bloodline centuries ago. Sorsha's blood ran cold. He knows. He knows about Thessaly. You have no proof of any connection, Malachar said icily. On the contrary. Dravis produced a scroll from his robes. We found this in the Eastern Archives, hidden among Thessaly's fragments. A bloodline registry, Your Majesty, and this woman's family is listed directly upon it. He tossed the scroll at Malachar's feet. The servant is not just a criminal, Dravis announced to the guards, his voice ringing with righteous fury. She is the last living descendant of the witch who cursed our kings, and according to the sacred accords established after the burning, she must be put to death. No! Malachar's roar shook the walls. He stepped forward, power radiating from him. You will not touch her. It is the law, Your Majesty. Dravis smiled coldly. Even kings cannot override the sacred accords. Take her. Guards surged forward. Malachar moved to intercept them, but there were too many, too fast. Hands seized Sorsha, dragging her from the bed. She screamed, fighting, reaching for Malachar. "Don't!" she cried. "Don't touch them! The curse!" But it was too late. Malachar grabbed the nearest guard, his bare hand closing around the man's throat. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the guard's eyes went wide. His skin turned gray. He crumpled to the ground, dead. Chaos erupted. Guards fled backward. Dravis's triumphant expression twisted into fear. But Malachar didn't pursue them. He was staring at his own hands, his face contorted with horror. "I killed him," he whispered. "I touched him, and I killed him." "Malachar." Sorsha struggled against the guards holding her. "It's not your fault. They forced you to. The curse is awake." His gray eyes found hers, wild with terror. "The love I feel for you, it's activating the full power. I can feel it inside me, hungry, growing stronger." His hands began to shake. "Sorsha, run. Get away from me. I can't control it, I can't." Silence. Dravis had recovered his composure. "This merely proves my point. The king's judgment is compromised. The witch's bloodline has awakened something terrible in him." He gestured to the guards who held Sorsha. "Take her to the dungeon. She will be executed at dawn. Touch her, and I will kill every person in this room." Malachar's voice was barely human, more snarl than speech. Power crackled around him, visible now, ice forming on his skin. "You cannot save her, Your Majesty." Dravis's voice was almost pitying. "The law is clear. Thessaly's descendants must die. It's the only way to break the curse." "What?" The single word fell like a stone into still water. Dravis smiled thinly. "You didn't know? It's in Thessaly's own writings. The curse can only be broken by the death of her bloodline. Kill the last descendant, and the kings of Valdenmoor will finally be free." Sorsha stopped struggling. She looked at Malachar, seeing the terrible realization dawning in his eyes. To break the curse, she had to die. To save her, he had to remain cursed forever. "No," Malachar breathed. "No, there has to be another way." But Dravis was already gesturing to the guards, already dragging Sorsha toward the door. And as she was pulled from the chamber, the last thing she saw was Malachar falling to his knees, ice spreading across his chest, his mouth forming her name like a prayer, like a goodbye. The dungeon was cold. Not the cold of winter or stone, but the cold of despair. Sorsha sat in the corner of her cell, knees drawn to her chest, watching dawn creep through the tiny barred window above. Dawn. Her execution. She had hours, perhaps less. The guards had told her with cruel satisfaction that the burning would happen at first light. The same death that had claimed Thessaly's coven 200 years ago would now claim its last descendant. How fitting, she thought bitterly. How perfectly, tragically fitting. But it wasn't her own death that tormented her. It was Malachar's face as they dragged her away. The ice spreading across his chest, the curse awakening fully, feeding on his love for her. If she died, would the curse truly break? Would he finally be free? Part of her hoped so. At least then her death would mean something. But another part, the part that had studied healing arts and questioned everything, couldn't accept Dravis's claims so easily. Something felt wrong about his explanation. Too convenient. Too clean. The curse can only be broken by the death of her bloodline. But if that were true, why had the curse persisted for 200 years? Thessaly had descendants before Sorsha. The bloodline hadn't hidden perfectly. There must have been others who were discovered. Others who died. So why hadn't the curse broken already? Unless Dravis was lying. The thought struck her like lightning. She sat up straighter, her mind racing. Dravis had known about Thessaly's writings. He had known about the bloodline registry. He had known exactly where to find the evidence to condemn her. How? The answer came slowly, terribly, because he had been looking for it. For years, perhaps decades. Not to break the curse, but to ensure it never broke. "Oh gods," Sorsha whispered. The dungeon door creaked open. She expected guards, executioners, perhaps Dravis himself come to gloat. Instead, she saw Lady Vivian Merrick. Sorsha scrambled to her feet, pressing her back against the wall. "Come to watch me die? I suppose that's fitting." But Vivian's expression wasn't triumphant. It was haunted. "I didn't know," she said quietly. "About Dravis. About what he planned." "What are you talking about?" Vivian moved closer to the bars, her silk dress incongruous in the grimy dungeon. "I hated you. I blamed you for Corwin's death. I wanted you to suffer." Her voice cracked. "But I didn't want this. I didn't know Dravis was using me." "Using you how?" "He approached me months ago, said he knew where you were hiding, offered to help me get justice." Vivian's hands twisted together. "I thought he was being kind. I didn't realize he had his own agenda." Sorsha's eyes narrowed. "What agenda?" "The curse." Vivian swallowed hard. "He doesn't want it broken, Sorsha. He wants it to continue. Forever." "Why?" "Because as long as the king is cursed, he remains isolated, controllable, unable to form alliances through marriage, unable to produce legitimate heirs who might challenge the council's power." Vivian's voice dropped to a whisper. "Dravis has been the true ruler of Valdenmoor for 17 years. He's not going to give that up." The pieces clicked into place with horrifying clarity. "He killed my brother," Vivian continued, tears streaming down her face. "Corwin discovered something. Some secret Dravis was hiding. So Dravis had him murdered and framed you for it. A branded criminal from a witch's bloodline, the perfect scapegoat." Sorsha's legs gave out. She sank to her knees, the truth crushing her. "I didn't kill him," she breathed. "I always knew I didn't, but I could never prove." "I can prove it now." Vivian produced a crumpled letter from her bodice. "I found this in Dravis's study. A letter to Magistrate Corvin, instructing him on exactly how to torture you into confessing, with payment for his cooperation." Sorsha stared at the letter, at the damning words written in Dravis's own hand. "Why are you helping me?" she asked. "You hate me." "I hated the woman I thought killed my brother." Vivian's voice broke completely. "But you didn't kill him. Dravis did. And if I let you die for his crimes, I'm no better than he is." She pulled a key from her pocket and unlocked the cell door. "The king is in the throne room," Vivian said urgently. "Dravis has convinced the council that the execution must happen immediately, before Malachar can intervene. But the king is fighting them. He's threatening to kill anyone who touches you." "The curse will drain him if he keeps fighting," Sorsha realized with horror. "The more emotion he feels, the faster it kills him." "Yes." Vivian grabbed her arm. "You have to stop him, Sorsha. You have to show him there's another way." "What other way? If Dravis lied about death breaking the curse, then what's the truth?" Vivian pressed something else into her hands. A fragment of parchment, ancient and yellowed. "I found this with the letter," she said. "Part of Thessaly's original writings." "Read it." Sorsha's eyes scanned the faded text, her healer's training helping her decipher the archaic script. "The curse I have wrought feeds on cold hearts and colder ambitions. It will persist as long as the kings of Valdenmoor close themselves to love, for isolation is its sustenance and fear is its breath. But love, true love, freely given and fully received, is the curse's destruction. Not the death of my blood, but the union of it. When a cursed king bonds with a daughter of my line, not in fear but in joy, the ice shall melt and the cold shall end. This is my gift hidden within my vengeance, redemption for those brave enough to seize it." Sorsha looked up, her pulse racing. "It's not death that breaks the curse," she whispered. "It's love. Full, complete bonding. Malachar and I were meant to find each other. Thessaly designed it that way. Then why did Dravis claim otherwise? Because if the curse breaks, so does his power. Sorsha clutched the parchment like a lifeline. He's been keeping the kings isolated for generations, ensuring they never found Thessaly's descendants, never discovered the truth. Until now. Vivienne's expression hardened with determination. Go. Save your king. I'll hold off anyone who tries to follow. Sorsha hesitated. Vivienne. Thank you. Don't thank me. Just make sure that monster pays for what he did to my brother. Sorsha ran. The throne room was chaos. Sorsha burst through the doors to find Malachar surrounded by guards, ice coating his entire body like armor. His eyes were white with power, his skin translucent, his lips blue as a corpse's. He was dying. The curse was consuming him from the inside out. Stop! Her scream cut through the chaos. Every head turned. Malachar's white eyes found her, and for a moment something human flickered in their depths. Sorsha? His voice was a whisper, a croak, barely recognizable. You should be in the dungeon. I escaped. She strode forward, ignoring the guards, ignoring Dravis's furious commands to seize her. And I know the truth. All of it. Guards! Dravis stepped forward, his composure cracking. She is a condemned criminal. Execute her immediately. Touch her, Malachar snarled, and I will freeze the blood in your veins. You can barely stand, Your Majesty. Dravis's voice dripped with false concern. The curse is killing you. Let the witch die, and you'll finally be free. He's lying. Sorsha held up the parchment fragment. This is Thessaly's own writing. The real cure for the curse isn't my death. It's our bond, full and complete. Love freely given and received. Murmurs rippled through the assembled courtiers. Nonsense, Dravis scoffed. Forgeries, lies concocted by a desperate criminal. Then explain this. Vivienne's voice rang out from the doorway. She strode forward, holding the letter aloft. Your own handwriting, Lord Chancellor. Instructing Magistrate Corvin to torture an innocent woman into confessing to a murder you committed. The throne room went utterly silent. Dravis's face drained of color. That's a fabrication. Is it? Vivienne turned to the assembled nobles. My brother Corwin discovered that Dravis had been manipulating the curse for decades, keeping our kings isolated to maintain his own power. Dravis had him killed and framed an innocent healer's daughter. Her voice shook with rage. I believed the lie for 3 years. I helped hunt an innocent woman, but no more. Guards! Dravis screamed. Arrest them both. They're conspiring against the crown. No one moved. The guards looked at each other, at the dying king, at the 2 women with their damning evidence. Then, slowly, they turned toward Dravis. Lord Chancellor, the captain of the guard said quietly, perhaps you should come with us. This is treason. Dravis backed away, his eyes wild. I am the power behind this throne. Without me, this kingdom falls. Without you, Malachar rasped, this kingdom might finally heal. He tried to step forward, but his legs buckled. Sorsha caught him before he hit the ground, his weight crashing against her. His skin was so cold it burned. Malachar. She cradled his face in her hands. Stay with me, please. The curse. His eyes were flickering between white and gray. It's too strong. I can't. Yes, you can. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Thessaly's writing said the bond must be complete. Love freely given and fully received. You have to let me in, Malachar. All the way. No more holding back. If I let myself love you fully, then the curse breaks. For both of us. For all of us. She pressed her forehead to his. Trust me. Please. Trust us. For a long, terrible moment he was silent. Then his cold hand rose to cup her face and she felt the curse recoil, loosening its grip. The ice on his skin began to glow, not with cold, but with light. "I love you," he whispered. "Fully, completely, without reservation or fear." The words hit her like a wave of warmth, and Sorsha felt her own power rise in response. Not the bound, crippled gift she'd lived with for 3 years, but something ancient and fierce and beautiful. The healing magic of Thessaly's bloodline, awakened at last. "I love you too," she breathed. "Always. Forever. Whatever comes." She kissed him. Light exploded through the throne room. The light was everywhere. It poured from Sorsha's skin, from Malakar's chest, from the very air around them. It was warm and cold simultaneously, fire and ice merging into something new, something whole. Sorsha felt the curse like a living thing, a serpent of frost coiled around Malakar's heart. It thrashed as her light touched it, fighting, screaming in a voice only she could hear. "You cannot destroy me," it hissed. "I am vengeance incarnate. I am 200 years of hatred and grief." "No," Sorsha replied, her healing magic blazing brighter. "You were vengeance. But Thessaly left redemption hidden in your core. She wanted this to end. She wanted her descendants to find love, not death." Lies. The curse lashed out, trying to drain her, trying to freeze her the way it had frozen so many before. Sorsha felt the cold seeping into her bones, felt her heartbeat slowing, but she didn't let go. Instead, she pushed deeper, following the curse to its source. She found the original wound, Thessaly's grief, her rage, her broken heart, and she wrapped it in warmth. "I'm sorry," Sorsha whispered to the echo of her ancestor. "I'm sorry they destroyed your family. I'm sorry you suffered alone. But the cycle has to end. Let it end. Let us all finally be free." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the grief softened, the rage dimmed, and beneath it all, a voice, ancient, tired, longing for peace. "Thank you," Thessaly's echo whispered. "Thank you for understanding." The curse shattered. The light faded slowly, leaving the throne room bathed in ordinary torchlight. Sorsha blinked, her vision swimming, and found herself still cradling Malakar in her arms. But everything had changed. His skin was warm, truly warm, for the first time since she'd known him. The ice was gone from his body, the translucent pallor replaced by healthy color. And when his eyes opened, they weren't gray like winter storms. They were blue. Bright, brilliant blue like a summer sky. "Sorsha." His voice was strong, clear, and full of wonder. "You did it. You actually did it." She laughed through her tears. "We did it. Together." He pulled her close and kissed her, and this time there was no cold, no fear, and no curse lurking beneath the surface. There was only warmth and love and infinite possibility. The throne room erupted in cheers, but Sorsha barely heard it. She was too busy being held by the man she loved, feeling his heart beat strong and steady against hers. Finally, they were free. The aftermath was messy, as aftermaths always are. Dravis was arrested and put on trial for murder, conspiracy, and treason. The evidence Vivian had gathered proved irrefutable. He was sentenced to life imprisonment in the same dungeon where he had planned to let Sorsha rot. The council was restructured. Many of its members had been complicit in Dravis's schemes, turning blind eyes in exchange for power. They were removed and replaced with people of actual integrity, including, to everyone's surprise, Lady Vivian herself. "I spent 3 years consumed by hatred for the wrong person," Vivian explained, when Malakar offered her the position. "The least I can do is spend the rest of my life trying to make amends." The brand on Sorsha's collarbone was formally removed in a ceremony witnessed by the entire court. The magistrate who had tortured her confession was arrested. Her name was cleared, her family's honor restored. Her younger brother, Fenwick, arrived at the palace a month later, skinny and road-worn but grinning from ear to ear. "I always knew you didn't do it," he said, as Sorsha crushed him in a hug. "I told everyone. They didn't believe me, but I never stopped saying it." "I know," she whispered. "Your letters kept me alive in those dark years, knowing someone still believed in me." Fenwick pulled back, his eyes wide as he took in the palace, the servants, the crown Sorsha now wore. "So you're really queen? Like, actually?" "Actually and officially." Malakar appeared beside her, sliding his arm around her waist with casual possessiveness. "Your sister saved my life, broke an ancient curse and exposed the greatest conspiracy in Valdenmoor's history. I figured the least I could do was marry her." Fenwick stared at the king for a long moment. Then he grinned. "Good. She deserves someone who appreciates her." "I appreciate her every single day," Malakar said softly, looking at Sorsha with those impossibly blue eyes. "And I will continue to do so for the rest of our lives." 3 months after the curse broke, Sorsha made an announcement at dinner that nearly caused Malakar to choke on his wine. "I'm pregnant." The king stared at her, his fork frozen halfway to his mouth. "What?" "Pregnant, with child, expecting." She smiled at his stunned expression. "The healer confirmed it this morning." The fork clattered to the table. Malakar was around the table in an instant, pulling her into his arms, his face buried in her hair. "A child," he breathed. "Our child. A child who will never know the curse, who will grow up loved and whole and free." "Yes." Sorsha held him tightly, tears of joy streaming down her face. "Our child will know nothing but warmth." The news spread through the palace like wildfire, then through the kingdom, then through the neighboring realms. The cursed king of Valdenmoor, the untouchable ruler who had killed with a touch, was going to be a father. And his queen, the branded healer who had been condemned as a murderer, was going to be a mother. It was, everyone agreed, the greatest love story Valdenmoor had ever known. The baby arrived on the first day of spring. A girl with her father's blue eyes and her mother's dark hair. They named her Thessaly, in honor of the woman whose curse had nearly destroyed them and whose hidden gift had ultimately saved them. "It feels right," Sorsha said, cradling the infant in her arms. "To give her that name, to transform it from something feared into something loved." Malakar sat beside her on the bed, one arm around his wife, one finger clutched in his daughter's tiny fist. "When I was 7 years old," he said quietly, "I killed my mother by hugging her. I spent the next 17 years believing I would never hold anyone again." His voice thickened with emotion. "Now I have a wife who sleeps in my arms every night and a daughter who will never know what it means to fear touch." "Because of us," Sorsha reminded him, "because we chose love over fear. Because of you." He kissed her temple. "You fell asleep on my chest that night, and everything changed." "An accident," she teased. "The best accident of my life." He smiled, and there was no shadow in it, no cold, no curse, only love, only joy, only the warmth he had been denied for so long. Outside the window, spring was blooming across Valdenmoor. The eternal winter that had plagued the kingdom for generations had finally lifted. Flowers grew where only frost had thrived before. Children played in gardens that had been too cold for decades. The curse was gone, and life had returned. Sorsha looked at her husband, at her daughter, at the kingdom blooming beyond the glass. "This is what Thessaly wanted," she murmured. "Not eternal vengeance, not endless suffering. She wanted redemption. For her bloodline, and for yours." "She got it," Malakar said. "Through you." "Through us," Sorsha corrected. "Always through us. Little Thessaly cooed in her arms, her blue eyes bright with newborn wonder. Sorcia smiled down at her daughter, at this miracle born from tragedy, this love forged from a curse. She remembered the night everything had begun, collapsing from exhaustion, falling onto a cold king's chest, waking to find herself still alive in his arms. No woman could get close to the Alpha King, but she had. Not through beauty or status or scheming, but through simple, exhausted accident. She had fallen asleep on his chest, and he had let her stay. And in staying, she had changed everything. "I love you," she whispered to her family, to her king, to her daughter. "I love you both so much." "And we love you," Malachar replied, his blue eyes shining. "Today, tomorrow, forever, forever." It was a word Sorcia had never dared to hope for. A word that had seemed impossible for a branded servant, a condemned healer, a woman with nothing but shame and secrets. Now it was her reality. Forever with a king who had once been cursed to kill with a touch. Forever with a daughter who would never know fear. Forever in a kingdom finally healed, finally whole, finally warm. The curse was broken. Love had won, and Sorcia, the maid who fell asleep on the Alpha King's chest, had found her happily ever after at last.